Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Modcast. That feels so weird to say. We have changed the name. Whoa. But is it a reboot? Is it a continuation? It's a continuation. That's why this is episode 31.
Hey, maybe it's a reboot, like, Mystery Incorporated.
And speaking of Mystery Incorporated, how about our names?
Nothing much changes here. We haven't rebooted the intro, so. I'm Wudge.
I'm Chronicler.
I'm Slime.
Okay, I guess before we get into the topic at hand, I think people would probably wonder, where's the Bunkles? And I'll say it's coming, okay? Just wait. But in the meantime, go watch some cartoons. Go watch Scooby Doo, Mystery Incorporated, which we will spoil everything and anything in this episode. So if you haven't watched the show, do it, because it is very good.
Ew, but isn't Scooby Doo that one show that's just so repetitive and it doesn't have any plot whatsoever?
But to be fair, Scooby Doo has had multiple iterations spanning the generations that have followed a set formula, which is, the Monster of the Week formula. And Mystery Incorporated does have that, but it also has a lot of other things, like characters that actually have lives outside of solving mysteries, and as well an actual plot that has been thought out from episode 1. So it actually has elements of a grander show or something. It's not as repetitive as you might think.
So, it's an interesting story how I got into it, because I'd seen it a few times as a smaller child when it was coming out on TV, but I never really paid much attention to it other than oh, it's a thing. Then recently, and by recently I mean earlier this year, I was talking with Waj in one of our usual post-modcast chats, and we were talking about cartoons, and Waj was like, oh yeah, I've watched Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, and it's amazing, and you should watch it. And I was like, okay. And so then I watched it, and I was like, this is amazing. And it's amazing in a lot of ways. It's not perfect. I wouldn't call it a perfect show.
I wouldn't call it perfect, but I think we'll get to the ending, which I think is quite divisive, but others may disagree, I suppose. But I guess a good place to probably start is with the characters and what they had done with them. I really like the fact that Fred is obsessed with traps. It's such a bizarre thing to be obsessed with. He just loves them. I love that they give explanations, it's part of their character.
A lot of the things that Mystery Incorporated does is that it takes the tropes of the original series and tries to explain them in ways that almost make sense. As far as, the reason why Fred's always oh, let's make a trap, guys, is that because he's literally obsessed with traps and he has nothing else in his brain.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's pretty crazy.
It's just traps and mystery solving. That's about it.
I love how, in the first episode, it's what are little kids doing these days? Mystery solving. And it's no, nobody is. It's a weird thing to do. I like how the characters acknowledge that it is, a strange hobby that they have.
Art style-wise, I really like what Mystery Incorporated did with the characters.
Oh, yeah.
The way they interpreted them from the originals, the way that they each give the characters their own kind of distinctive silhouette so that you can recognize them. It's really cool, with different body shapes and all that, which the original had to a certain degree, but I feel like it's just more emphasized in Mystery Incorporated. As well as just the art style in general of the show, I really like. It's got a very distinctive vibe to it that's kind of hard to describe in a lot of ways.
It's more sharp.
Yeah, it's really sharp. It's really clean in a way without being super clean. There's a lot of texture as well. There's a lot of green tones to it, which adds to a lot of the mystery vibe, which I feel is really good. I feel like it's a very good interpretation of the original series. And translating it into a modern fashion that doesn't look like absolute trash, unlike other Scooby-Doo reboots that I've seen on television.
We do not talk of that.
Get it away.
Be cool, Scooby-Doo!
Kill it with fire, and then burn it more, and then make sure that you send it to an alternate dimension.
Well, yeah, the art style is really cool. There's a lot of, dark shadows.
Yeah, lots of heavy contrast to it. You look at the originals, there's no shading whatsoever.
That's because I didn't have the budget for that back then.
Yeah, that's true. No budget, no shadows.
Still looks good to this day.
The original's a lot more rounder and softer. Fred looks a lot more boyish. Shaggy looks a lot more boyish. Velma looks a lot more boyish.
What the?
One thing that I find kind of interesting about Scooby Doo Mystery Incorporated, though, is that, Scooby Doo isn't actually, like, in the foreground. I like that change. He's still there as, like, the comic relief, and also sometimes, like, there's some plot lines.
A serious character.
Yeah, well...
My brain goes immediately to the end of season 1, where the iconic line of, "You won't get away with this, or my name isn't Scooby Doo!" It's the best ending to a season that you'd ever ask for.
It honestly is.
I feel like the fact that they don't focus on Scooby is actually great, because this is a series where, like, almost everything is explained. Fred's obsession with traps, Shaggy's eating food, and Velma's smarts, they're all explained. Not once is it touched upon the fact that Scooby-Doo is a dog that can talk.
Yeah, it's just whatever.
Scooby doesn't get any kind of backstory whatsoever, and I feel like that's a good thing, because if you go into that, then it starts to get confusing and unnecessary, and it's like, Scooby-Doo was a genetic experiment gone wrong, and it's like, it's too edgy.
Hey, Kylerak.
Hello.
Introducing Kylerak!
I am actually here today to talk about Scooby Doo and Scrappy Doo. No, he's the worst.
There's that one episode where they're, like, going through the hall of the old villains, and one of them was just Scrappy Doo. We don't talk about those times.
We promised we wouldn't talk about him ever again.
Can we just wipe him from existence?
Scrappy Doo.
No!
I want a reboot of Scooby-Doo with nothing but Scrappy. Just Scrappy and then 5 other Scrappies.
Does anybody remember that terrible Scooby-Doo movie?
Well, Scrappy Doo was the villain.
The live-action Scooby-Doo films are no good. Although, actually, the Vilma in the live-action film was the voice actor for Hot Dog Water in Mr. Incorporated.
I knew I recognized that voice from somewhere.
That movie was not meant for kids, but it wasn't meant for adults either. Shouldn't have been made.
No, it shouldn't have. The thing about Mr. Incorporated, I like how the motivations of the different villains or the different monsters of the week vary. You know, sometimes it's like, oh, well, I was in it for, like, this precious jewel or for the money.
Rubbing that little mustache,
like that.
looking sinister with the monocle.
For some reason, it's always about money in the original TV series. It's like, oh, I was just gonna try to get
I do
money.
like that guy, that magician guy who's the ghosties, and how he, like, tries to make himself look like he's walking through walls and stuff.
Oh, that was good.
I liked that guy a lot. That was a great episode. Castle one.
That was in the original.
There's a lot of villains, or not really villains, but, you know, that did things like, there was a one ghostwriter, I guess, essentially, riding the motorcycle, and he kind of abducted the ladies.
The ladies?
Yeah, the ladies.
Wow, he's a ladies' man.
What he was doing was that he was putting them in, like, this, like, spa resort thing. And the thing about it is that people had assumed that he was abducting them, but apparently the women had come to him from their own volition. I don't know, I just find that, like, a really funny motivation, I suppose.
It's just an excuse to get away. I can't deal with your crap. I'm going somewhere else.
There's a lot of interesting plots. There's, like, that one where it's like a Terminator Scooby. I think it's the episode where Professor Pericles breaks out of jail.
Professor Pericles is a very interesting villain. You know, he's German, so, you know, okay, it's a little bit generic evil villain type. Then he busts out the Nazi robot mech suits, and I'm just sort of like, okay. We've gotten to a new level here, and I like it. I like this level. Mystery Incorporated operates within this medium of being, like, really a lot darker than any other Scooby-Doo series.
I like it, though.
Also, just subverting all of the tropes.
Kind of like Gravity Falls, but for Scooby-Doo.
I'd still say, overall, Gravity Falls is better than Mystery Incorporated.
Gravity Falls had taken a lot of cues from Mystery Incorporated, I think, since Mystery Incorporated does predate Gravity Falls. But yeah, it's definitely a lot darker. The finale of season 1, it just gets into, like, an uncomfortable place. Essentially, the motivations of Fred's mayor dad. He, like, bleaches Pericles' eyes. Like, that's how he gets that scar. As well, the fact that he's not actually Fred's dad, and the fact that he stole him as a baby from his parents.
Then you find out his parents were even huger jerks.
Yeah, that's just messed up, man, for a kid's show.
No wonder he's perfect in every other way. You know, he has to have some mess up in his life. I guess it's his parents.
At least they actually gave him death In the original cartoon, he seemed like he had the least depth.
All the main cast minus Scooby get very good amount of character development. And Scooby doesn't really need character development because he's Scooby Doo.
Yeah, it would be kind of weird if Scooby got a bunch of character development.
It was weird enough in the episodes where, like, Scooby wouldn't talk to, like, Shaggy because of, like, the whole Velma. It was, like, a love triangle scenario, and it's just like, I mean, I do think that what they did with the whole, like, love relationships between them, it was handled very well. Fred and Daphne, everyone gets that, like, oh, Fred and Velma are together, whatever. It's like, okay.
Yeah, Fred and Daphne.
Yeah, putting Shaggy and Velma together. Did I say Velma? I meant to say Daphne with Fred. Shaggy and Velma is something that, to my knowledge, no other series has done, and I think that it's an interesting thing because the series starts off with them being together, and then as the series progresses, it's like it realizes that putting those two characters together just doesn't work, and so they don't go together. And
Yeah,
it's fine.
I really like how their relationships are sort of foils of each other. The series starts off where Velma and Shaggy are in a relationship, and their relationship just takes a dive and breaks apart. Fred and Daphne's, it builds over time, and there are downs, especially in season 2, like this beginning of season 2. The ripoff character for Twilight, their own version of it, Dusk, he's like the vampire, but it does eventually get back to them being in a relationship at the very end. One thing that I really liked about Mystery Incorporated, and I think we're probably going to get into the end of the series at some point, but what I actually really did like was the fact that there was a predecessor to the Mystery Gang. I really liked that. And how they are actually pivotal characters in the series. Like, there's Fred's parents, and Mr. E, who is essentially Jontron. He is the animated embodiment of Jontron. If this idea has not been planted in people's brains, it needs to be, because he has an evil parrot sidekick. He has the, whatever, like, huge neck beard. He's fat. I don't know if John plays like a pink guitar, but dude, he's totally Jontron.
Like, when I started it, the whole idea of having the mystery is like, oh, who's this mysterious mystery? I feel like not just a problem I have with mystery, it's with the original Mystery Incorporated, the entire of them, minus maybe Pericles. It's just, they feel kind of wasted to me, because it's like, there's this huge build-up to them, and then, like, it all explodes out in, like, the end of season 1 or whatever, and then throughout season 2, it's just sort of like, oh, they're there.
That's a thing that I felt as well. Especially, I think it's like episode 17 where you actually, for the first time, see Mr. E's face, because at first he's, like, in the shadows, like Dr. Claw, but he actually does get a face reveal.
Doesn't he just, like, talk to them over the phone or something?
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Like, at the beginning of season 2, Vilma and Hot Dog Water team up as a band of mystery solvers, and they're in correspondence with Mr. E, and it's just so casual. It's like, oh yeah, I guess they work for Mr. E, and they can see him and stuff, and it's like, oh, I guess he's just kind of there. There's not really a Mr. E behind Mr. E. I guess that's what happens after you have a face reveal, you know?
I feel like it was just too rushed. If they had saved it until later, I feel like it would have been good. Because having a background character like that who's, like, driving the story, it's really good. It's like, you have the mysterious villain, and then it turns out the mysterious villain isn't actually a villain. I just feel Mr. E is wasted potential.
Season 1, I think, does a better job of keeping him mysterious and sort of threatening. One thing with this is that the person with the afro, Cassidy
Williams.
I like the fact that she's set up as a character in the first episode, and then later is revealed to have significance in the overarching plot. She actually, like, sacrifices herself, doesn't she? Although...
Should we get into that? Before we get into the endings, there's an episode in season 2 specifically that I can remember off the top of my head that I absolutely despise with a passion. And that is the Blue Falcon episode. Because it's like, oh, look, we're bringing back an old Hanna-Barbera royalty, and it's cool.
Dude, I like that
I would be totally fine with it if it was non-canonical, if it was all just a dream, if it had no bearing upon any of the plot or anything like that, I'd be totally fine with it. But it's canonical, and it actually happens, and it doesn't fit in the universe.
They had an episode that was essentially Scooby having a fever dream, and that was non-canonical. It was them, like, with all the other knockoffs of Scooby Doo, the mystery gangs. And it's actually cool because it's, like, in the style of the old show, like the originals.
Yeah.
It's a nice touch.
Dynamite and Blue Falcon, I just...
If it wasn't canonical, then it would have been cool. But it is. So, The ending of Mystery Incorporated.
What even was that?
There's a lot going on. People die. It's pretty dark. Like, hot dog water gets, like, Gatling gunned down, and it's off screen. Professor Pericles gets eated, and then Mr. E gets eated by, like, some weird alien dimensional monster or something.
Nibiru.
You know, whatever.
It's Nibiru.
Yeah, Nibiru. Yeah, it's like, what happens is that they go to an alternate dimension where everything is fixed. Every single thing is resolved. It would be kind of interesting if there were alternate versions of themselves in that alternate reality. I guess they have replaced those people. I don't know. But essentially, everything is resolved, and I feel like it's kind of a cop-out ending.
Look, Makuta is stuck in the dimension forever, and then the Toas are going back up. No, the end. Wow, we ended the story really well.
So I said before that I like the fact that they had, like, a previous generation of the Mystery Gang. I don't like the fact that there were mystery gangs, like, across the generations, like, into ancient times, and apparently they have some significance to this ancient dimensional treasure, and the planets have to align or whatever, and it's like, I don't really like that kind of thing in stories, where it's like, I think that's why I like Gravity Falls a lot for what it did with its whole, like, Bill Cipher prophecy. They're like, oh, but it doesn't actually go anywhere. The solution to the conflict is solved through their own wit, and it's not by some kind of, like, weird prophecy that is fueled by the power of friendship.
Oh my.
Power of friendship.
Rainbows.
I really don't like the ending of Mystery Incorporated.
I disagree with Lodge on this point. I totally understand not liking it, but at the same time, like, I personally have no issues with there being previous mystery gangs and, like, the whole prophecy thing. Like, yeah, it kind of breaks from the whole idea of Scooby Doo, which is every single mystery can be solved through logic and discovery and all that. And it breaks that flow, but I don't know. As its own thing, I personally don't mind it. Also, the last few episodes have Scooby Doo in a Nazi mech suit shooting various people, and you can't go wrong with that. You can't go wrong with that. There's just no way. Oh, and did I forget to mention the part where they turn the mystery machine into a war machine?
That was great.
They just wreck shop on everyone. It's wonderful. I love it. I love it so much.
Up until the point where they opened the weird dimensional gate, I really liked it. I really liked where it was going. I kind of wish that the treasure wasn't some weird dimension altering thing. Like, I don't know, maybe it granted you superpowers or something. Or just, like, maybe it would grant you an infinite amount of something. It could have been something else, not some weird, you make a deal with the demon and then he eats you, you know? Like, that's, like, no. I don't know. I think, like, it could have been handled better.
What they could have done is they could have made it so it was an infinite amount of food, and Shaggy and Scooby would just be eating it all, and that's how the series ends.
I didn't have any problems with it. I mean, the whole retcon everything, I didn't immediately dislike that, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it's kind of ruined any kind of relationships and, like, development that's happened over the past 57 episodes. But, you know, hey, I can get over that, I guess. I don't mind the whole fantasy aspect to the show that much.
When it got into them going into dreams, they went to, like, a Twin Peaks-esque place. They were finding, like, artifacts or whatever.
Oh yeah, they went into that guy who was, like, the dream dude, whose, like, other half was stuck inside the dream world, or something weird like that.
That, and just the whole Nibiru thing, like, I think it could have done without that. Like, even the ghost conquistadors I find were cool. I didn't have a problem with that. Maybe it's because Scooby-Doo has done things with ghosts in the past as well. If the treasure that the planispheric discs had led to was just, like, some ancient Spanish treasure, I don't know what it would be, but it would be something that you would think conquistadors would possess. Maybe. I don't know. It just seemed like way too far-fetched. Especially something that was, like, spanning generations to, like, ancient Egypt or whatever. I thought it just got way too convoluted at the end.
I didn't mind it. But you know what I thought was the best part of the whole series? When a piece of the planispheric disc was in that wheel of cheese. that no one had touched for 500 years. I like the fact that Mystery Incorporated is kind of set in a time in and of itself. As far as, like, clothing style and all that, like, it's not really set in a particular time period. Because there's, like, a mix of, like, modern stuff and, like, there's 80s vibes to it. Like, you look at the fashion of everything and it's like, it doesn't correspond to, like, anything at all. And that's something I really like, because it's like, it's kind of got a lot of 60s and 70s vibes to it.
It does sort of have like a timeless vibe, going with the whole like ambiguous time zone. The fact that Fred pulls out his smartphone, but it's like a brick.
Yeah.
I think the animators just did that because it's like, oh, smartphone, right? It's great. I love it. The supporting cast of Mr. Incorporated is also really good. Like, I really like Kronk, who is Patrick Warburton, as Sheriff Bronson Stone.
He's the best. Even if you start to dislike him, he could be a jerk, but you can't dislike him. He's great. It's just that voice and how he acts and everything.
Yeah, his voice is perfect.
He was essentially like a nerd in his younger days playing D&D, and there's like an episode that's like one of his D&D characters come back to haunt him or something like that.
I'm gonna just say this. This series would have been 100% better if Scrappy Doo had a cameo.
Well, I mean, he did, but he's a statue.
He needs to actually legit exist in there. And then they could have, like, kicked him off a cliff, and all the fans would have been happy.
I guess that was the Modcast. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, Scrubs.